We are coming up on NFL Week 7. So crazy as it flies on by. I have Erik here from eTop21 Sports to go over all of our game previews for Week 7. We've got we have 6 teams on bye, so 13 games this week instead. So a few less. This is one of the bigger weeks as far as the amount of teams on bye. A couple things that are big picture. Games are only averaging 36 just like 36 and a half points heading into into Monday Night Football. It was 36.7, and that was the lowest average for a week since week 8 of the 2007 season. And then there was 37 points scored on Monday Night Football. The unders went 12-2 last week. And this week, 10 out of 13 games have totals of 45 or less. Offenses are scoring touchdowns on 53.3% of their red zone opportunities. That's the lowest rate league-wide through 6 weeks since 2011. Do you have any sort of like wide-ranging thoughts on why it is that stuff just is? Do you think it's like a few different factors all together, or is there anything like big picture?
I mean, I think there's a lot more injuries. I think there's more injuries because of the changes of the preseason rule. Yep. And then it's kind of the trickle-down effect of like that. There's less camps equal less time.
Less calluses to build up, right? Yes. Sometimes we've heard that load management is sort of the right way, but I think sometimes it all depends, right? If you're the type of player who's been injury prone, obviously getting some time off is great. But I think overall, you got to build up some bumps and bruises through the year, right?
And I mean, like, I know for me personally, like way back when I used to be athletic, used to be good, and I used to do some things, I would want the reps, just selfishly for myself.
Absolutely.
And, not having those in-speed game reps is one thing. There's less. There's also less scrimmages, which is hurting. And right now, basically, no one plays a preseason. We need to remember way back when, like a couple years ago,
everybody played 2 games.
Yeah, first game, no one played. Second game, you played a half. Third game, you had more your run. You set out the fourth game. Now, most of these players aren't even playing in the preseason, and it's showing with how slow they are.
And then I think there are a few other small factors, like the age of the quarterback this year is very young, like the average starting quarterback. Just kind of compare, right? We've got no Brady anymore, no more Breeze, no more Ben, no more Rodgers isn't playing this year. So you substitute a lot of guys that were like solid veterans for a long period of time that had pretty good statistics. And now you've got a lot more variance, I think, with some of these teams too, with some of these younger quarterbacks. Another point that I was listening to, I think it was on the Pick 6 podcast, Brady Quinn was talking about, he's seen just poor offensive line play coming up now because of how teams play in college, a little bit more spread, that when they get to the NFL, a lot of these guys aren't quite as prepared. So you're seeing just like sloppier guys on the offensive line. And man, that's something that you point out all along, because you can have a great quarterback, couple nice playmakers, but if you don't have an offensive line that's fluid or at least competent, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot.
Yeah, you need that offensive line. You need those big boys setting the tone, giving time, and
knowing the fundamentals, right? Knowing just the right way to play and the smart things to do, and
nothing new. I mean, he's right with that statement. Historically speaking, players that were drafted and come from a spread type system tend to take a little bit of time to get used to it. So that was actually a good point by Quinn.
And then something else to look at, the AFC, super wide open. There's only 3 teams with a losing record in the AFC: Denver, the Patriots, and the Titans. Everyone else is either 500 or better. Let's get into our game previews for this week. Remember, we're looking at DRF Sportsbook as we talk through these games. You can actually sign up for an account at DRF Sportsbook. And if you use our promo code, which is FAST350 right here, if you're in the state of Iowa, it'll give you all the way up to a $350 deposit match bonus. I'll scroll that across the bottom of the screen while we're talking, and you can all take a look. Also, just a site while we're talking and while you're listening, go take a look at this site that's called parlayplay.io and use our promo code NFL Betting Blitz. If you're listening to this show, if you're watching this video, you will like this site because you can wager on props. You can parlay them together what I like wagering on, you can bet on the over or under of a projected player's fantasy points. So if you're someone who plays in DFS or you played in fantasy football leagues for a while and you sort of know what some of the players on your team might have projected, might not, maybe a lot of the time you're looking at those going, there's no way my guy's getting that, or I'm going to go way over that. You can actually take advantage of it, Eric. That's what, with all these sites, there's a lot of like DFS and prop sites and stuff out there. What I'm always looking for as a player is what is unique about this site, what makes this site different. They've got options here that a lot of other places don't have.
They have options. I like the combos where you can get players with the receiving stuff, comboed fantasy points. They even do targets. They just have a wide range, and it's not just central down to the meat and potatoes. There's a way more variety, if you will.
Okay, let's get into Thursday Night Football. We've got the Jags at the Saints. Do we know the for sure status of Trevor Lawrence as of now? We're recording on Wednesday night.
As we know nothing right now.
Okay, because he was banged up, limping, and it is a short week. They've won 3 in a row now, and they are looking like they're in pretty good shape at 4-2 to where they could get away with like not playing him and losing a game right now at this point of the year, right? You don't really want to jeopardize it with him, but we don't really know how serious it is.
I'll be honest, like they are to me the most least impressive 4-2 team there is. Just kind of in terms of a betting, this is just the spot of spots. Jaguars played 2 games in London, traveled back to Jacksonville. They played a team in the Colts where the Colts had a halfway comparable quarterback, wasn't making.
Two guys last week, man, Minshew and Baker, they were bad last week.
He was making some rookie mistakes.
It was honestly the worst game I can remember from Minshew. He had 7 turnover-worthy plays, and in most of them, it wasn't because of the Jacksonville defense. It was just he just played bad. Really poorly. Like he's
really bad.
What he is he's got like a very wide range, which is not what you want as a starting quarterback, right? Like his floor is really bad. We've seen him be plenty competent throughout this year in games where you're like, oh yeah, that's fine. But then the difference between that version of him and what we saw the other day, that was really, really bad.
I've never been the biggest Minshew guy.
No, and you guys, and then you sort of were trying to talk about how he's looked better this year. He's in a better spot. Like the coaching staff's doing him well.
He's better, and I thought,
and they just and you were right. You were right, but man, he was so bad.
If you just kind of like rewatch the game, the Colts were moving in the ball, and the big thing that stood out to me is a short turnaround. Jaguars defense was on the field for 75 plays. Now you have the quick turnaround going to New Orleans, and if you kind of do a deep dive into that box score, Saints 20 more offensive plays, outgained the Texans by 130 yards.
Oh yeah,
first downs. That was another team that they box score wise should have won that game. Just kind of looking at it, they're coming off a 2-game road trip. Teams that are coming off a 2-game road trip that are home favorites, which they are, 63% ATS. Home favorites in general in these Thursday night games are 55% ATS. Colts had more yards per play, more yards per pass attempt. Jags just weren't that impressive at all. Even offensively, they didn't even have 300 total yards.
It was so quiet. Like it's kind of quiet the last 3 weeks because they have both of their games in London. The first one was more of Ritter playing really poorly. The second one was the Bills coming there really late and coming off a spot, and then the Bills getting really banged up. And then last week, you were pointing out a lot of the things. Like, it just feels like a really good spot to take a swing against the Jags here. They've been living on the takeaways too, right? And sometimes you'll have a year where you do that, but a lot of times that sort of evens out.
And New Orleans is a tough place to play. I know Allen isn't the best coaches covering, but this is just the spot of spots. I got this at open when it was a pick 'em. I got this at 107. Anything under, like right now at this 1.5, I'm absolutely fine with playing.
Yeah,
I would definitely take the Saints here.
Me too. One area the Jags need to improve too is red zone offense. They're 20th in the league in converting red zone opportunities into touchdown. Keep an eye on their injuries. The right guard and the cornerback got hurt. They're already missing a wide receiver and a left guard. So on a short week, they could be without 4, maybe more starters and decompromised in some way.
These guys like mail.
The Thursday's in, right?
Yeah, so.
The Saints had more first downs, as you mentioned, more total yards, more yards per play, but they went 0 for 3 in the red zone. They had 2 turnovers and 7 penalties for 83 yards. They drove inside the 30-yard line 5 times, and on those possessions, they scored 6 points. The last 4 drives of the game, they were all inside the 30-yard line, and they ended up they also missed 2 field goals in the game. They had 4 penalties against their offensive line, which is really struggling. They've been 25th in pass blocking grade this year. Carr threw the ball 50 times. It was kind of hit or miss. He'd have a couple good passes, and then he completed 32. He still hasn't quite gotten it all together with them yet, but I've been kind of reading into and looking into things about how Carr really does seem to improve more games and deeper into playing with like new staff. So I'm expecting some more improvement from him going on. They're only averaging 18.2 points per game. That ranks 24th in the league. It's actually worse than it was last year when they were at 19.4. And the one thing about them is it's not like I'm a huge Saints fan. I think they're a little phony too with some of their metrics. This is more of a spot play for me in taking the Saints here because the Saints are number 12 overall in DVOA. And most of their metrics this year are going to be like, if you're looking at them, they'll be strong because their defense will grade well. Here's the schedule of offenses they've placed so far. The Titans, the number 22 offense, and the Titans was when Tannehill was bad that game and missed a few passes. The Panthers, who are number 31 in offense. The Packers, who are number 16. The Buccaneers, who are 18. The Patriots, who are 29. And the Texans, who are 11. The best 3 offenses they faced, they lost all 3 of those games. I still think it's a great spot. Some positives, some negatives for the Saints, but I like them in this spot. I'm with Erik. Anything at the 2 or under, I'd be okay with taking the Saints, and that will be probably one of our 5 games that we can come together on this week. 1 game over 500 now, as we are through 6 weeks of the year for me and Erik, giving out 5 that we combine on each and every week. Let's go Falcons at the Bucks, Erik. Tampa is 3-2, Atlanta 3-3. Tampa comes off of a game against your Lions where it never felt like Tampa was going to win, but there were a couple plays in the game that sort of flipped things quite a bit, right?
They never really felt out of it. If that makes sense.
Exactly. Like you never were looking at it going, oh, they're going to, like, they didn't feel like they had momentum, but it was only like, it was a one-ish score game most of the game. And then late opened it up a little bit. Baker had Evans on open on a busted coverage and he just missed. It got batted up in the air and intercepted. And that ended up becoming a Lions touchdown. Just like a massive swing. It wasn't a great week for him. He graded as quarterback number 17. Honestly, watching the game, he was probably worse than that. He did get banged up a little bit on his non-throwing hand. He was 2 of 10 on 20-plus yard throws down the field. He missed a couple that looked like they would have been touchdowns. I don't want to give it all to him. Evans had a bad drop on what would have been a first down on 3rd and 12. They drove into Detroit territory 3 times. Field goal, turnover on downs. You know, you just got to be more efficient when you move into opposing territory. They only had 251 total yards. 69 of them came on the final possession. And, you know, they were down by 14 with 10 minutes and 30 seconds left. And they got a 4th and 2 and they punt. Like, these are the kind of things that I scratch my head a little bit about with their coaching staff. You know, I think they were on like their own 35. So again, but it's late in the game and you're down by 2 scores and you're putting yourself in a position where even if you do get the ball back, you're not going to have any opportunity. You just got to be a little bit more aggressive, especially when you're playing against a team like the Lions, who are really, really aggressive and are always going to run a couple more extra plays than you based on them just going forward on 4th down. The key with Tampa, they can't run the ball, Erik, again this year. They struggle running the ball. They've averaged just 78.8 rushing yards per game. That's 29th in the league. Only 3 yards per rush, which is dead last. Now we get over to the Falcons side. Falcons are a 2.5-point underdog in this game on the road. Ritter has just been so inconsistent and up and down. He's been moving the ball down the field more, but just making some bad decisions. They had 25 first downs. Washington had 13. This is one of those box score games that you look at and it's like, how did the Falcons lose this game? They had 402 total yards. Washington had 193. They had 5.1 yards per play. Washington had 3.9. Atlanta held the ball for 36 minutes. Washington held it for 23 and a half. The Falcons ran 29 more total plays in the game, but there were 3 turnovers, and that's why they ended up losing. Ritter had this one sequence. It was like when you watch it, someone just get rattled, and you can like see it. Erik, he had an overthrown touchdown, then a delay of game on the next play, and then they were going to have another delay of game. So he's like ran the play when he wasn't ready and throws a bad interception. It was like just this awful sequence that you're watching, and they kept showing Arthur Smith's face when he would make these plays, and he was just
I rewatched that game from the coach's cam, and I mean basically what's going on is he just throws it to the first guy. He doesn't read the field like he used to in college. He's really hasn't progressed as much as I thought he would. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to play the Falcons for the first half at plus 1.5. Todd Bowles is 13-25. That is 34.2% ATS for the first half in his coaching career. With the Bucks, he is 41% ATS. But the big thing to me is this. Ritter's not going to go his whole career not covering the first half. He is 0-10 in his career against the first half number. There has to be more regression to the mean. I think this is the spot where he's going to do it. I think you mentioned all the stats about how they outgained them, how they averaged 5.1 yards per play, how they had over 200 yards more offense than them. Bucks, in my eyes, are starting to come back to earth a little bit.
Yeah.
They're having some drops. They're starting to get banged up a little bit more in the secondary. Offensive line's a little bit banged up. Some defensive linemen are a little bit banged up. And I think what we're going to see start to happen is they're going to start to kick it in Bijan mode more.
I think you got to now.
I think they're going to start riding this kid a little bit more. Also, the last 2 seasons, divisional road dogs are 56% against the number in the first half. I'll take the Falcons here, plus 1.5 for the first half.
Yeah, with Ritter, the 5 interceptions the last 3 games between him and Smith, they were just kind of off too. They were having a hard time getting plays off on time. Tried to call a timeout late, and they had to call a timeout late in the game, and it's like a really bad situation, which was their last timeout. False starts, delay the games. It's not great. But their defense, man, they were put in a really bad spot, and they only allowed 3.9 yards per play and 193 total yards. They had 5 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. Washington had touchdown drives of 11 yards, 27 yards, and 52 yards. They had a field goal to start the game on a 56-yard drive. Special teams gave up a 61-yard punt return to set up a short 11-yard touchdown. This team is good, and like overall, they're a good football team. They've made a few mistakes with the quarterback. They could have at least won 1, possibly 2 more games. I don't think they were going to beat the Lions, but they probably could have been a lot more competitive in that game with Jacksonville. And I wonder, Ritter wasn't like a first-round pick or like a high pick. He was someone that they're going with because he's probably the best selection for them and someone that they could maybe build around. But do you think, at what point do you think they say, hey, well, maybe we give Heinicke a look?
Heinicke's not that good.
No, he's not. I just feel like he'll make more mistakes. And that's the problem, because Ritter keeps making these mistakes. He's supposed to be playing more like mistake-free football with this team, right?
Throw the ball more. Heinicke will chuck it more downfield. Right? Ritter's not taking chances.
That's my only worry. Is I think
that's basically the thing that you're doing on. That's basically it.
And I don't disagree with you in that Heinicke's not very good. He might be a slight upgrade or even just slightly different to fit this offense a little bit better. We'll see, because he's looked good, better overall, but then, those few plays are the plays that he just can't make in this situation, in these close games with this team where they have another very winnable game right here. Falcons at the Bucks. Erik's on the first half. Let's go Bills at the Patriots. We've got the 4-2 Bills taking on the 1-5 New England Patriots. Man, the Bills have had a hell of a lot going on over the last few weeks. So they've got this huge win over the Dolphins 3 weeks ago. Everybody crowns them. Then they travel late in the week to London in a flat spot. They lose that game. And then over those 2 games, they just get banged up like crazy. They come back from London. They got to play against their a former coaching staff, basically. A bunch of the former personnel that knows their team pretty well, and they're all banged up on the defensive side. They get shut out in the first 3 quarters against the Giants. These were their possessions to start the game. 3 plays, 3 yards, punt. 6 plays, 40 yards, and a fumble. 5 plays, 38 yards, punt. 3 plays, -4 yards, punt. 6 plays, 31 yards, missed field goal. 5 plays, 29 yards, interception. It was the first time Buffalo hadn't scored in 3 quarters of a game since week 4 of 2018 against the Packers. It's 82 games in a row where they've at least scored in the first 3 quarters. They did go on this long, sustained drive in their first drive of the second half. That was 17 plays, 84 yards. It took 9 minutes and 58 seconds. It was their longest drive in terms of time since 2016. So they started to figure things out. Then they go 12 plays, 70 yards for another score. In those 2 drives, they had 29 offensive plays. They ran 28 in the whole first half. It was a good game for Diggs. He had a reception on 8 different types of routes and a season-high 65% of the air yards with a 53% target rate. Look, I'm not a Patriots fan here, Eric. I don't think they're a good football team right now. I do think there are probably 2 games that maybe 3 that they could have won. Not even them playing well or not even them being a good team. But if they're 3-3 or 4-2, we're talking about them like completely different. We're not talking about them like they're the worst team in the league. Mac Jones is the worst quarterback in the league, and Belichick is done. Even last week, they did not play well. There was a wide open pass late in the game. Mac Jones threw a dime, and it just went right through Devontae Parker's hands.
Best pass he's thrown in his career.
Honestly, it was a dime, and he just dropped it. If you played the Patriots, you were covering until the safety late in the game.
And I played the Patriots, and I knew it. As soon as the Parker dropped the pass, I was like,
"You're like, we're done. There's going to be some turnover somewhere."
I said he was going to have to take a safety. So look, the thing is they started rolling out more stuff with Cunningham. I think we're going to see more packages with Cunningham. Is Cunningham the long-term answer? Probably not. Zappy, I like Zappy. I've been a Zappy guy since the Western Kentucky days. I wasn't a Mac Jones guy at all. But I will say this, it would have been interesting if the 49ers would have drafted him instead of Trey Lance. What would be going on there? How would these franchises change a little bit? Just kind of looking at it, home divisional dogs getting 7.5 or more, 56% against the number. Bills defense struggled since Milano went out. Milano's kind of the middle linebacker, stout against the run, can drop back in coverage, cover the tight end.
They got some big injuries on the defensive side, man, with Milano and White. There's 2 or 3 more, like, real key injuries.
And their secondary is bad. As much as everyone wants to talk about how good they are, their secondary is pretty bad. Bills defense they can be run on. I expect a heavy Stevenson game. I know Stevenson owners and fantasy are stressing out. This guy wasn't even a top 25 running back last year at this point. Finished as RB8. Got to trust the process. He will be a top 10 running back by the time the season ends. You just kind of look at Josh Allen's numbers. Only averages 220.9 yards per game against the Pats. TD to INT ratio is down 2.3 to 1. QBR is down. Looking at Diggs time with the Bills. He only has 2 games of over 100 yards. So Belichick and crew have been able to scheme a way to kind of take those 2 guys away. Look, Patriots look awful. Mac Jones looks like a high school kid out there.
He's regressed. He was way better the first 6 weeks. There's nothing that we're going to say to defend them, but this is a spot you just got to take them.
This is a spot. Look, I know the numbers dipping down right now. I'm looking at, DRF has this as 8.5. I was able to get this at 9 in another shop. Anything over a touchdown a play, I'm sitting on a +9, and I absolutely hate it.
Mac is 0-13 in his last 13 games as an underdog. That's straight up. And they've only led in 15% of their games this year. And even in the game last week, they were able to score a few times. It was like difficult for them. All of their scoring drives required at least 9 plays. That was against a bad Raiders defense that ranks as a bottom third defense. This year, they had a stretch where they got outscored in 10 quarters, 85-6. They didn't score a touchdown in 12 straight quarters. They had 29 drives in a row where they didn't reach the red zone. I was listening to a podcast, the PFF, one of their podcasts. It was pretty funny. It was like 2 stand-up comedians going back and forth. These guys all had these like really funny stats on how inept the Patriots have been. And the guy was like, Are we just going to go rolling on the Patriots right now? And they just went boom, 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 like back and forth, rattling off these. They're the only team in the league not to score more than 20 points in a game this year. They have 72 points on the year. The Dolphins scored 70 in one game. They actually play Miami and Buffalo twice more this year. The next 2 opponents here coming up. But you mentioned it. Malik Cunningham. I think they got to give him a look in here. And I just think it's too much right now. The Patriots are at their lowest point, and the Bills are still at a high point, and it hasn't caught up with all the injuries, right? Since the Miami game, they've not covered twice as a favorite.
And this Bills team just hasn't looked right. Like offensively,
they get up, like
right.
They play Miami well, and they will get up for certain games and certain teams, but they're depleted right now. And yeah, this is a really good spot for the Patriots there at +8.5. Let's go.
And this
Brown.
is the game like you don't watch. You just
yeah, you don't got to watch the games.
You just check the score and then rewatch it, see what happened. But this is not a game you want to watch because it's going to drive you crazy.
This is another game where it's just for me all about the spot in here because I'm going to give you a bunch of positive stuff about the Browns right now. Jim Schwartz is 9-1 as a head coach or a coordinator when he's playing against Shanahan as a head coach or a coordinator. He just dominates him, Erik. He knows his scheme. He knows how to stop him. He knows how to make life difficult for him. This year, 4 of the 6 best individual game defensive performances have been from the Browns. 4 of the 5 best games this year by any defense based on success rate allowed have come from the Browns. The defense has only allowed 1,003 yards in 5 games. That's the 3rd fewest since the 1970 merger. This was the biggest win as an underdog based on point spread since 2010 for the Browns, who were like 9.5 or so, right? Last week. Is that where it closed against San Francisco?
Closed at 9.
In that range.
Somehow my 6, I got in earlier in the week.
Still okay.
Was able to get there.
And you know what? People talked about their defense winning the game for them, and it did. But look, they had more first downs, more total plays, more total yards, more yards per play. They were equal on 3rd and 4th down to San Francisco, and they were starting PJ Walker, 3rd stringer. He's going to make some questionable decisions, but the guy's not scared. He'll still make a big play right after he makes one of the worst decisions you'll ever see.
In terms of having a 3rd string quarterback.
Oh, dude.
I mean, that is an experienced 3rd string.
That's as good as you're going to get.
He's got numerous starts.
He's not afraid. That's the key, is that he'll step in there and he's just not afraid of the moment.
And the first one of the XFL, which got shut down because of COVID, he would have won the MVP. That's a pretty good guy. I really think in terms of everything going on with this game, there's a little tidbit that was tweeted out by Schefter that is kind of getting ignored. Gover Stewart. I'm sure everyone's like, who the hell is that? He's actually one of the best run stoppers in the NFL. He plays for the Colts. He's been suspended 6 games for performance enhancing drugs, assuming it's steroids. Regardless of the QB situation the Colts just lost their best run stuffer. So that means even if Watson's not back there, and if this is a flat spot, I don't know if the Colts are going to be able to stop this run game.
Because that's the key.
I think it's a heavy Ford, heavy Hunt game, turn around, hand off. I think Ford, we need to remember he's out-snapped and he's out carried Hunt since Hunt resigned there. And another thing, Chubb's contract was coming up next year. Ford was drafted to be to be Chubb's replacement, and Hunt wasn't re-signed. And I think that's important. Like, I know all these fantasy experts are saying Kareem Hunt this, Kareem Hunt that. Just kind of read the room. You know what I mean? They drafted this kid to be the replacement. It's just a little bit a year ahead, and he's looked good when he's had the opportunity. I think this is a big Ford game. I think he's a must-play in DFS in terms of player props as soon as they're listed. I'll look at his player props. And I'm also going to say this. When you look, like, if we just kind of take a look at the Colts schedule, it wouldn't surprise me if Gardner Minshew is benched in a couple weeks. When you look, they play the Browns this week. Browns, and for my money, the best defense.
Well, that's what's scary as someone who's playing the Colts here and just on the spot. It's scary to think about possibly Minshew under pressure here and this defensive front, what they could do to the Colts here. We saw that Browns team come off of such a high getting up for that game last week. They ran the ball well, as you mentioned, 160 yards on 34 rushing attempts, shut down San Francisco, held them to just 215 total yards. I think this will be a game where they really try to get Taylor more involved, right? They really try to take some pressure off.
Well, this is another thing. It's going to be a split backfield because they're trying to increase Moss's trade value.
Sure.
So with Moss still there, it's still going to be kind of a split thing. What I was told is the Cowboys, are actually the team that is calling for Moss, which would be kind of interesting. Pollard a little smaller, be good thunder and lightning, fast, quick combination. I just don't trust Minshew. At the end of the day, I just don't trust Minshew, and not having Stewart there to clog the middle is a big thing for me. So I'm just going to pass. I'll probably look at some Ford props and start Ford in DFS.
The Browns have lost the turnover battle in every game this year. Something to keep an eye on that may catch up with you at some point. Cooper had an awesome game, a couple big contested catches. He ended up finishing with over 100 yards. And yeah, I mean, Minshew, he's not as bad as he was last week. That was like the worst game you're going to get. He's not a guy that you want every week starting for you. I feel you're going to get a better effort and you're just going to get a better outing from him. I just don't know, like, personnel wise, like you were saying, if they're missing some of their key personnel, like run stopping, and then it could be tough for them to slow down the Browns defensive front. This feels like a great spot after a really big win for the Browns last week. And who knows what the hell is going on with Watson? That's just weird, right? The guy's been cleared already for a few weeks. Everybody's saying he's going to play. The coaches don't really know what to do. Like, this is the game, Eric, where if you have a good coach and a strong foundation and like a good leader and a quarterback like that, you win this game and you don't lose in the flat spot. I don't know if they have that there, right? And that's where it could be key for the Browns. Let's go to your Lions. At the Ravens, I locked this one in, buddy, at +3. I really think it's a good matchup for the Lions. They are up to number 2 in DVOA, which is the highest they've ever been. They have the number 3 defense. They're the number 5 defense defending the pass, number 3 defending the rush. Only 2 teams in the league are top 5 in both categories defensively. And this is the 4th time. They've already had 4 times this year they've held their opponent under 20 points, 3 of them on the road. They have scored at least 20 in every game this year, 15 straight, and they've hit 350 yards in every game so far. They didn't turn the ball over at all against Tampa, who is averaging 2.5 takeaways per game. This team's just proving they can win in different ways, Eric. Tampa shut down their run. The Lions only had 40 yards on the ground and 22 carries because they're missing their top 2 running backs right now. So what do the Lions do? They lean on Goff. 340 yards, 2 touchdowns. St. Brown has 12 receptions, 124 yards, 6 first downs, and a touchdown. They just look like a team, man. They get this fantastic block from Reynolds to spring a touchdown. We're going to start hearing about some Jared Goff MVP talk soon, because this guy recently in his last 17 games, he's 13-4 as a starter, over 4,400 yards, 29 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a 69% completion percentage. That's a full year. That's a full year of a sample size for Goff. Last week on third down, he was 10 of 14 with a sack, 2 touchdowns, 11.4 net yards per pass. Man, this team's even sort of getting a little better. You see Jamison Williams, he's still not looked fantastic every time he's been out there. And he was even kind of crossed up a little bit on that deep pass, but he makes a huge play and he gives you something that you don't have, a field stretcher like that and just a different wrinkle. Laporta was rumored to be a little banged up heading into the game. He actually was defended very well in the game. He had a couple catches. He was targeted a lot. But you, the Lions, have won 4 games now in a row by at least 14 points. It's the first time they've won 4 straight by double digits since 1991. So I look at the Ravens here, and I think this team is a little bit overrated based on what their schedule has shown, Eric. They are number 2 defensive DVOA. Here's who they've played. Stroud, first game of the year in his first start. And in that game, they still got outgained in total yards. Remember, we liked the Texans there, and that game was like a lot closer than it looked on, but just the final score. Week 2, they play the Bengals, and Burrow gets banged up. And the Bengals' offense has not been good this year. They lost to Minshew. They played DTR starting for Cleveland. They played Kenny Pickett, and then Tannehill and Malik Willis. So, yeah, the defense is grading out well because they haven't played much offense. They've played one offense that's a top third offense based on DVOA. The highest they've played is number 11, which was the Texans. The Colts are 14, Titans are 22, Bengals are 23, Browns 27, Steelers 28. They moved the ball well in the first half last week, but they had to keep kicking field goals. As you pointed out, their offense isn't humming. It's not fluid. They ended up needing Tucker to kick 6 field goals in that game. And then they opened the second half. Punt, interception, punt. Titans scored 10 straight to cut it to 18-13. They've only scored 1 touchdown in their last 7 quarters. And they're like not figuring it out. They had 13 runs in the red zone and didn't score. And they were 2 of 3 on passes in the red zone and scored a touchdown. It's just like things are a little off when you watch them. I don't think they're quite as good as it may have looked so far. I like your Lions in this spot quite a bit, Eric.
Yeah, I play the Ravens -3. I just feel like we're getting to the point where the market, like right now, what is everyone talking about? Lions are the best team. Lions are going to the Super Bowl. I just kind of feel that they're a little bit overvalued. I know the Chiefs are 5 DVOA, the Ravens are 6, but this is the first game of the year. We can make a statement. We can make an argument that this could be the best team that the Lions have played. They're going on the road, playing in Baltimore. I'm a little bit worried. Jonah Jackson, who's the guard, is banged up. Frank the Tank Ragnow, who's one of the better centers in the game for the Lions, is banged up, along with Gibbs, who's rumored to come back. Montgomery, Reynolds got hurt. So you could be without your top 3 running backs, some injuries to the interior. And I'm also really worried about the DB injuries to the Lions. I mean, Mosley out for the year, Gardner Johnson out for the year. Brian Branch, I don't know if he's going to play. He didn't practice today. If he's not in there, that brings Will Harris in there. Harris was the guy that blew the coverage in Evans because Evans was lined up in the slot in that play. Will Harris is a big liability on the defense. Of not having Branch in there is going to be pretty big.
I love, and you said it. I love that with you and me, we are the opposite of most people who think that their teams are the best and will never lose and always just want to bet their teams. And you and I are always like at least with the Rams and the Lions in particular in this year. And I know you've been that way with the Lions, and I'm pretty much that way most of the time too, but it's funny. It's funny, man.
And then one more thing, like Jackson's right now kind of entering Mahomes level. When the spread's 3 or higher and he's a favorite, you want to avoid him. When the spread's 3 or lower, or he's a dog, you want to take him. When the spread is 3 or lower, he's an insane 70% against the number as a favorite. So anything 3 or lower, I like the Ravens here, possibly some weather issues. I know Goff has looked better outside, but we still hasn't seen him play in a while.
No, that's always been
northeast cold, rainy day. What's that going to look like for Goff? He's been a great guy. He's looking great. But I just kind of feel like right now, oh my God, who was the guy that was on ESPN2? The two guys with the same name. The one guy's still on ESPN. He does a morning show. There was something on
Mike
Twitter.
Greeny.
Yeah, that guy. He was saying the Lions are the best team. Lions are winning the Super Bowl. It just kind of seems right now we're in this phase. Any team that's the talk of the league the following week loses.
I feel like this has been maybe 2 weeks where we've been building that, and I was sort of waiting for that with the Lions, and it feels a little different with them this year. We'll see. But you're right in that this is different in that this is the best quality opponent, and you're hearing all that hype. The last couple of weeks, they played teams that they're just way better than, so like they can beat those teams.
Honest, as a fan, I hope they lose the game just because I want some adversity early.
Yeah. So the Ravens and the Lions in one of the most interesting games of the week. Let's go to the Raiders at the Bears. We've got the 3-3 Raiders at the 1-5 Bears. Raiders are a 3-point favorite on the road here. This was the first time that the Raiders hit 20 points all year in the game against the Patriots, and they only got it because of a safety late in the game. They drove inside the 20-yard line 6 times and came up with 1 touchdown and 4 field goals and an interception. They're only scoring 16.6 points a game this year, and they've allowed 21.8, but they're 3-3. And they have games coming up with the Bears, the Giants, and the Jets. Like, the Raiders are actually in a pretty good spot here. I think the Bears are the play if you're going to play this game, but just looking at their schedule overall, you got 3 teams that are very winnable games, and you're already at 500 through 6. So you sneak out 2 of these games, and you're in really good shape. Jimmy G left in the first half with a back injury of their last game. Hoyer came in. He was fine. He graded his quarterback 13 on the week. He finished with 2 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. They were up 2 in the late in the game, though, and the Patriots had the ball with the chance to win it. And they got a nice sack. Crosby's just been amazing this year. He's like on pace for quarterback pressures to be like top 5, I think, all time, or in the PFF grading era, at least of the last 15 years or so. The tight end Mayer was very good for the Raiders. He had 5 catches, 75 yards, 2 explosive receptions, 3 missed tackles were forced on his receptions. And you got the Bears. 1-5. Fields is hurt with a thumb injury. He was 6 of 10 before getting hurt. And now they're without their starting quarterback and their top. Are they getting back Johnson this week? They were without their top 3 running backs at one point.
Johnson should be back. Roscoe, or whatever should be back.
And it'll be Tyson Badgett starting. I will say he came into the game, and the first few plays he had, I was like, oh no. He looked like the speed of everything was so much faster than how he was operating. And then he actually noticeably got competent in a couple drives. Like, he wasn't as bad as it was.
How can I word this? He's probably had 20 snaps the last
I was going to say, dude, the guy's got no reps, and you could see it at the beginning, and then you could actually see him getting just more comfortable. That had to be like a rough situation for him, like you said, just not very well prepared getting out there. And then it was like, right off the bat, he got sacked, a fumble, returned for a touchdown. But yeah, he had a nice drive, and they were moving the ball again. But like you expect, he threw a bad pick on 1st and 10 on a pass he just shouldn't have made. But it's not like they were getting the greatest level of quarterback play before, right? So this is what you got to look at a lot of time. Like, what's the drop off from what they were getting before to what they may be getting now?
Yeah. How can I word this? Bears are the worst coached team in the NFL by far. And it's absolutely positively not even close. There's this play circling around where linemen are going to the wrong side to pick up a blitz. How does that happen? It is absolutely just insane. They've whiffed on numerous players. I just don't know what to expect from this team. Now there's words coming out that they're going to tank. They just want the first 2 picks. You mentioned the Fields injury. Is he even going to play? I don't think he is going to play. Just looking at the history of the Raiders organization in Las Vegas, they are 24% ATS as a road
This
favorite.
is when they're awful too. In these spots like this, going
the
east, like
last time that they covered a game as a road favorite was 2016, which it's crazy that's 7 years ago. PFF grades the Raiders O line against the Bears defensive line as an insanely good matchup. Look, at the end of the day, I really don't trust either one of these teams. The one thing I'm going to look to do, and I've been kind of doing this, just taking whatever the running back is against the Bears, the receiving prop over. This is hit for the starting running back and the third down running back every single week this year. Bears give up the most yards per game to opposing running backs in the receiving game. So I'll take Josh Jacobs, probably be 15, 16 and a half receiving yards over, and I'll just call it a day and then don't even worry about the side.
We got Washington. The Commanders are a 2.5-point favorite on the road playing the Giants here. Over under in this game 39, one of the low totals this week. So you got the Commanders who win last week, a game where they got outgained, out possessed in time of possession. Just didn't look like they should win in the box score, but Atlanta sort of gave them that game. And it's, you watch Howell and he's like a real gunslinger type, but man, so
RB12 for fantasy this year right now.
I know. And that one game when I played against you, he got 0.56 in that 1 week. So he's literally been that so last week he got sacked on 5 of 30 dropbacks. At least 2 were him running into them. He's been sacked 34 times. And what's crazy, Washington is 8th in pass blocking grade, and they're 12th in pass blocking efficiency. So it kind of shows you he's running into a ton of these sacks that are like his fault. They were obvious about wanting to get Terry McLaurin involved last week. He was targeted on 11 of his 26 routes, 42% target rate, highest in any game of his career. So far this year, this defense has allowed the most pass plays of 25 yards or more with 16. It's another spot where it's like, the Giants are really low valued right now. They should have won that game last week. It's happening for the Giants and the Vikings this year because these were the two teams that last year overachieved based on their metrics. It wasn't as blatant for the Giants as it was for the Vikings, but just a lot of things bounced their way. And now this year, things like this. They were the only NFL team in the last 30 years to run the final play of scrimmage of each half from inside their opponent's 10-yard line and not score a point on either drive. They're the They're the only team in the last 30 years to have 2 drives in a game at any point where they ran a play on 1st and goal from the 1 and got 0 points in those drives. That's nuts. They are the only team in the Super Bowl era to have more rushing yards, more passing yards, fewer interceptions, fewer fumbles, and fewer missed field goals and still lose a game. Teams were 134-0 in the Super Bowl era when they've done all of that, regular season and playoffs. That PFF noise-canceled score metric had the Giants beating the Bills 21-16. They were 0-4 in the red zone. Even their offensive line, that's bad. They're one of the worst in the league. They played admirable last week. They did enough for them to win that game. It was by far one of their better efforts with even lackluster personnel. There was guys sitting on the couch that played for them last week and was like one of their better, I think Pew gave them one of the better
outing. Him and his agent. That was all planned. They had T-shirts lined up that they're selling.
Oh, I know.
Props to them for taking advantage. Look, this is going up. As soon as this gets to 3, I will take the Giants. The Commanders score a little bit of a bluff. They're outgained by 207 yards. But the big thing to me is I always look at plays the defense is on because those guys get more tired than the offense. They were on the field for 79 plays, which is absolutely insane. Ron Rivera as a favorite, 41% overall. Giants defense looks better. You mentioned Scary Kerry McLaurin. Last 3 weeks, which Commanders wide receiver is a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football?
It's not Scary Terry, I would say, right?
It is Curtis Samuel. He is
Look at
wide
that.
receiver number 9. Jones banged up. Really don't know what we're going to get. Barkley's starting to get better. I think you can run on this Commanders defense.
And you know what? Tyrod, for as much crap as he got, like, from Coach Dable, just tore him apart, because that was probably Tyrod's fault. He called an audible, it looked like, at the end of the half. He audible to a run. They didn't have any timeouts left. And then they instead of being up 9 or 13, they're only up by 6. And that probably cost him the game. But Tyrod is 26-1 as a starter. That's his career record.
Yeah.
Right down, like he made a few mistakes, but he doesn't turn the ball over a whole ton. I just feel like this is a great spot for the Giants, and I'm with you. I'm going to wait for a little bit better.
It will pop. If it does it, I'm fine playing it too.
Me too. Let's get to Arizona at Seattle. We have Arizona 1-5 at the Seattle Seahawks, who are 3-2. Seattle's a 7.5-point favorite in this game. And, that's another game last week they should have won. They should have beat the Bengals. They had 381 total yards. The Bengals had 214. They had 24 first downs. The Bengals had 15. They had an 8-minute advantage in time of possessions. They were holding the ball for over 34 minutes, but they ended up losing because 2 turnovers, 7 penalties, but mainly 1 of 5 in the red zone. Metcalf also had a stupid penalty for unnecessary roughness, and then he stopped on a route that was on one of their interceptions. It was just a bad game from him. Opening drive, they go 75 yards on 11 plays, and then on their other 10 possessions, they scored 6 points total. Yep. And Geno Smith was pressured on half of his dropbacks, 25 of 51. So the offensive line, they got to shore that up a little bit. You could see it was like they'd have a big play, and the next play he was rattled. And then it'd be like a good play, and the next play he was under pressure again. The defense was actually very good against the run. That continued again. They allowed just 3.2 yards per carry on the season. That's the best number in the league. And they only allowed 46 yards rushing total last week. The PFF noise canceled score had them beating the Bengals 24-16. But positive stuff for Seattle coming off of that week last week. As far as playing them in this spot here, no thank you. I'm not laying more than a touchdown with them. Arizona, it seems like every game they play a good half or like a good couple of quarters in the game. In this game most recently, they ran the ball pretty well in the first half. They had 5 different players combined for 103 rushing yards and 24 carries in the first half. They held the ball for 20 plus minutes in time of possessions. They just weren't able to score on their long drives. They had 2 drives stall in the red zone. They were only able to kick 3 field goals despite all of the success in the first half and recovering a fumble on punt coverage. And then things were just way different in the second half. They couldn't move the ball at all. They only had 27 rushing yards. They had 2 turnovers alone in the fourth quarter. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other here, Erik.
Yeah. I'm still trucking along in my Survivor in Seattle.
Beautiful.
Week.
They play, right?
The one thing that's kind of stood out to me is the Cardinals offense is just struggling with no James Conner. James Conner not there to get that 3-4 yards on first down with a run.
And then a dump off. He just is.
They're just really getting behind it. Another thing that kind of stands out to me is they're 31 DVOA wide receiver ones. How are they going to stop DK Metcalf?
Yeah. And he had a bad week last week, so you feel like he's one of those guys that kind of bounces back this week. I mean, bad and just he may have been the reason they lost the game with like a drop and then just bad penalty.
Yeah. And then Cards versus Seattle. They're saying Seattle's offensive line has one of the better matchups per PFF. Look, I don't want anything to do with the side. This is a big number for a divisional game, but I think that the Seahawks will be able to win it, so I'm going to play them for the Survivor.
We got the 3-2 Pittsburgh Steelers at the 3-3 Los Angeles Rams. Rams are a 3-point favorite in this game, over under 44. Pittsburgh is also 3-2 against the spread. PFF has them overall as the number 27 graded team, grading all of the different units. Where they look to have their biggest strength is pass rush. No surprise. They're number 4 graded. And their defense overall is graded 15. But that's like it, Eric. Like, even their defense isn't like this dominant defense like it used to be. They have a good pass rush. In DVOA, they're number 20 overall with the number 28 offense and the number 11 defense. They have the number 25 offense passing the ball and number 31 running the ball. Their offensive coordinator is miserable. Pickett hasn't really shown a whole lot of improvement and taken the step forward. They have a couple of these wins this year that are total Mike Tomlin. I don't want to say fluky because they execute a little better than their opponent and they make a mistake or two less, but they're not any games that you're watching going, wow, that was impressive, or that looked good, or they were really moving the ball well. What? They come off a bye though, right? And this should be, if they're ever going to look a little bit better offensively, it should be here. I think it's, I'm leaning this way. I'm in a couple of these pools where you have to pick every game. I'm fine at the Rams at 3 and under. I just don't like Pittsburgh as much as I did preseason in what I've seen from them in their 5-game sample size. And for the Rams, it's so nice having Cooper Kupp back, man. He had a great game again, 7 receptions, 148 yards. He's been over 100 in both games, 15 catches for 266 yards in his 2 games so far. The defense generated pressure on 23 of 46 dropbacks, which is the highest pressure rate in a game this year so far. They even muffed a punt in the first half, which led to an Arizona field goal. And then in the second half, they started to run the ball with Williams, who he's banged up now too, though, right? And
yeah, he's going to be out for this game.
So, because he had 150 yards rushing in the second half alone.
Yeah, and everyone talks about McCaffrey. Williams is the only other back that has over 80% of a team.
And they don't have anything else there.
They did draft a kid who I like him coming out of Ole Miss, Evans. His biggest issue, though, is he can't pass, bro. That's why they're bringing up Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman's going to be in there on third downs blocking. Evans will probably get the early work. There's one thing I've kind of noticed about Sean McVay is if something's going on off the field, he can be a little distracted. And what's going on off the field right now? His kid is due literally any single day. For that first half, all they did was what? They just passed the ball. Second half, they came out, started running a little bit more, took advantage of the hole in the Cards defense. The big thing to monitor is when Cam Hayward plays, Pittsburgh is one of the best run defenses in the NFL. When he doesn't play, they really struggle. Last week at practice, he was running. I haven't seen the practice report from today, but I'm going to bank on him going on after the bye. Deontay Johnson is trending in the right direction. Tomlin as a dog, 65% ATS. As a road dog, 61.7%. Zach Evans, like I said, going to be getting the number 1 run. You mentioned the Rams, another team that was on the field defensively for 73 plays. Cards were in the red zone 3 times, only scored 6 points. Stafford, I love Matt Stafford. He's going to get his jersey retired for Detroit. He looks, he just looks old. He's not moving as well. Tends to stare down as number 1, hence why so much by Cooper Kupp. I just think the Steelers coming off the bye with the injuries in the backfield, Hayward coming back. I think this is just going to be kind of like the Ravens game. When you look up and the Steelers won it, and you're like, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah, this is probably one where we're slightly different sides. It's not like I would be lining up to play my Rams as the favorite play of the week, but I just think they're like a little bit better. I've been a little disappointed with Pittsburgh. Let's go Packers, another one team coming off the bye. They're playing at the Denver Broncos, and the Packers are a slight favorite in this game. It's basically a pick 'em right now. Packers are a 1-point favorite on the road, over under 44.5. Green Bay is the number 19 overall graded team on Pro Football Focus's metrics. They're a good pass blocking team. That's really it. Their defense is ranked 14. Pass blocking, they're number 4. Everything else, they're like, or below average. They're number 21 in DVOA. They're number 16 offense, number 21 defense. Will they look a little better coming off the bye? We've had a few games from Jordan Love where he looked good early, and then he's kind of regressed the last few weeks. They've give them credit, though. They have been banged up and missing some real key pieces. With Jones out, that's their best player and their best offensive player, who gives them such a different dimension with a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield and very good runner. And they were missing Watson for a few games, so should be healthier here. On the Broncos side, you've got Russell Wilson, who's graded as quarterback 18 on the year. So, he's not been awful or really the reason why they're losing all these games. Last week, he was pretty bad, though, and he was probably worse than being graded number 20 on the week. He made some bad mistakes at the end of the game. A really nice drive. He took a sack and a turnover on downs. He seemed uncomfortable, really couldn't sense the pressure. First drive of the game, 4th and 3, call a timeout, and they follow that up with a sack. They only had one pass attempted longer than 10 yards down the field in the first 3 quarters of the game. And, it's like some weeks the offense hasn't been the problem, but this week they couldn't move the ball at all. They had 14 total first downs, only 197 total yards, and only four first downs from passing. Think about that in an entire game. Like, some teams will have that on a drive, 4 first downs from passing the ball. And they lost the time of possession by over 11 minutes and 30 seconds. But then this is how you know a team, I don't know if they've given up or they're just a bad team or they're struggling. They find ways to lose as a team, right? Because this year, their defense has been awful, but in a game where their defense played okay and only allowed 18 points, they held Kansas City to under 20. Their offense couldn't play one game like they played a few times this year. That's sort of how you can just sense it. And that's what the
Devontae Williams was money. He was averaging 8 yards, over 8 yards, 8.4, 8.5 yards a carry. He, their first series, he got 1 touch. It just doesn't matter. I just don't understand.
It's off. Everything's off.
That being said, do you trust Jordan Love on the road?
At any type, I knew what you were going to say. At any type of being close to even or them being favored, they just shouldn't be. They shouldn't.
And also, it's important to read and look at Twitter and just kind of see these signings. Why are they signing James Robinson right now? That tends you to believe that this Dillon thing may be a little bit more than they're letting on. You know what I mean? So I'm a little bit worried. End of the day, I'm probably going to do nothing here. I will say this. We need to remember Vance Joseph's defense historically struggle against the tight end. Obviously, with that being said, Luke Musgrave, tight end props, will definitely be investing in them. Everything else is probably just to stay away for me.
First 3 games, Love had 7 touchdowns and just 1 interception. They won 2 of those games. Next 2 games, he had 5 interceptions and 1 touchdown, and they lost both of them. And Aaron Jones has missed more snaps than he's taken so far this year. So right there, if you know you're going to be missing one of your best players, you're going to probably be in some trouble. Oh, this is
not one of their best players.
The best player by far. Yeah. I had one more stat that was kind of out of order in my notes. The Steelers, this was a good one. They've scored 7 touchdowns this year in 5 games. 7, and 2 of them have been defensive touchdowns, which is just nuts. But you're right. It feels like the game against the Chargers might be that type of, or the game against the Rams might be that type of a game. I said Chargers because the Chargers are the next team we're going to talk about. Chargers are playing the Chiefs. Chiefs are a 5.5 point favorite in this game. Chargers come off a bad Monday Night Football loss where that was one of the worst games Herbert's ever played, honestly. He was graded quarterback 16 on the week. Probably worse than that when you watch it, though.
Yeah, it was a weird game.
Right? It seemed off.
And after that throw, everything was just dark. He was just throwing the ball as hard as he could. He really wasn't able to put that throw behind him.
The touch,
mentally,
yeah.
I think, he kind of lost it for him. But
they struggled running the ball again too. They only had 53 yards rushing, 23 carries, 2.3 yards per carry. They're only 19th in rushing EPA, 21st in rushing success rate. They only had 272 yards and only 4.5 yards per play at home off a bye. It was a weird game, like you said. Something felt weird. Different year though. Same team. All 5 of their games have been decided by 7 points or less. And realistically, they're 2-3 they could be 5-0. Like, very easily. You have a Chiefs team here who's no offense again, like sloppy in the red zone. They scored touchdowns 1 out of 5 times in the red zone. Mahomes threw a bad interception in the red zone. On a 4th and 3 from the 17, they kick a field goal, which is really weird. Later in the game, they got a 4th and 2 on the 6-yard line. They line up for a field goal, and then they go for a fake and don't get it. Like, why do you even fake it right there when you got Mahomes? Wouldn't you rather just have Mahomes get one more shot on a 4th and 2 instead of lining up the fake field goal?
Two words, Matt Nagy.
Just getting too cute, right? Like, you just getting too cute. It's the second time this year they've scored less than 20 points. And this is a different feel team for them. They still aren't getting very much from the wide receivers. Rice had 4 catches for 72 yards. He leads all of their receivers in receptions, yards, and touchdowns this year. Yeah, it's basically Kelsey and him, right?
Yep, and they did trade for Hardman today.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that'll help them. And it's been a defense that's been pretty impressive. They're allowing the second fewest points per game in the league, 14.7, and 6th fewest yards per game, 284. They're ranked number 9 by DVOA. They're number 6 against the pass, number 21 against the run. They do struggle against the run based on EPA metrics also. 29th in EPA allowed per rush, 23rd in defensive rushing success rate allowed. This should be a game where the Chargers have got to find a way to run the ball more, and this is probably the place to try to do it against this Kansas City team. Are you invested in this game?
Here's a trivia question for you. Who does Mahomes have the worst ATS record against?
I would imagine the Chargers.
Against Justin Herbert.
Oh, I like that. And after they dominate the Broncos, like they've just crushed the Broncos repeatedly for years. And not even knowing that stat that you mentioned, doesn't it just kind of feel that way? Like, it feels like a lot of these games these two teams have played have been close.
Yeah. And it's just, the Chargers it's always going to be a 1-score game, and it's going to come down to some Staley decision that it was him just outthinking the room. And that's basically, what kind of happened on, oh my God, on Monday. Like, why are you not kicking the field goal?
I know.
Mahomes, 45% ATS in his career. When it's 3.5 or more, when that drops down to 3, when it's a field goal, same thing. So Mahomes he's just that guy when it's over 3 and he's a favorite, you just want to fade him. You do it here. This game's going to come down to the last play. Chargers offensively are absolutely loaded. Chiefs defense has been playing lights out, but can their young DBs keep up with the playmakers? Eckler's second game back. It's always a second game back where you want to look at these guys where they do it.
Dude, and I don't know if you saw this before the game when they got that scuffle. Eckler got punched in the face. Did you see that?
Yeah,
dude. Well, and I mean, it may have been like he got a little rattled, like his helmet got knocked off his head. He wasn't even doing anything, and he got like hit with a left cross. It was like, whoa, I think he's going to be a lot better in this game too. It's like it's another. It feels like a good Charger spot.
Like you said, just hasn't looked right. Look, I got at 5.5. Anything over a field goal, I like. If it goes up to 6, I'll do it. But I think it's right around going to be the 5.5 right until game time.
Yep, I'm on the Charger side with you here. As we move to Sunday Night Football, Dolphins at the Eagles, very good game. We have two teams that are both 5-1. With the Dolphins, we saw both sides of the spectrum for them last week. They're down 14 early in the game, and their defense is just not great. They allowed the Panthers to pick up 21 first downs in the game, just 2 less than them.
I'm sitting here at that plus 14. I'm like, God damn it, dude, you're pretty smart.
I know. And then it just
son of a bitch. One of my buddies came over to pick something up, and he's like, "Oh, you got money on this game?" I go, "Yeah, I'm sitting on 14.5." He goes, "Oh, you're looking great."
And you knew it. Don't say it.
I was like, dude, why are you talking, man? I'm like, you just jinxed it. You just jinxed it, bro. And sure enough, look on one of the side TV is 28-14. You know what I mean? It slowly starts drifting away. But I
They're-
just
Like, you know what the Dolphins are, right? They're number 4 in DVOA overall, number 1 offense, number 27 defense. They're also number 27 defense in success rate allowed. Panthers go 7 plays, 64 yards, then 10 plays, 74 yards, back-to-back drive. They take a 14-point lead. Following that, the Dolphins score touchdowns on 3 straight possessions and 5 of their next 6, so they go up 35-14. Panthers kept moving the ball, though. They had drives, 31 yards, and in a turnover on downs. 8 plays, 40 yards, missed field goal. 10 plays, 51 yards, ends in a turnover on downs. Man, Hill, got to give him some love. He is unbelievable. He had 6 catches for 163 yards and a touchdown. Did come up hobbling a little bit at the end. The defenses, they just have to account for him everywhere. He could have had a much bigger game even. Right now, he has 814 receiving yards. That's the most ever for a player through the first 6 games in the Super Bowl era. He has 140 yards more than the guy who's second, which is A.J. Brown. He's the first player in history to have 150 yards or more receiving in 4 of a team's first 6 games in a year. And in his career with the Dolphins, he has 2,524 receiving yards in 23 games. That's the fewest games any player has taken to reach 2,500 receiving yards with any single team in history. Like, they're really well balanced on offense. They run the ball well and they pass the ball well. McDaniel's got a great offensive scheme. He really does. They're number 1 offensive DVOA in rushing, number 2 in passing. They have 15 rushing touchdowns and 15 passing touchdowns. They lead the league in rushing and passing yards, something no team has done since 1941. And they're the only team in the league averaging over 150 yards rushing per game. They average over 180. They're the only team in the league averaging over 300 passing yards per game. They average 316. So I gave them a lot of credit right there, Eric, but here's what I got to say. They're averaging 37.1 points per game. Only the Washington Commanders have played an easier schedule of opposing defenses so far. Here's the list of the defenses that the Miami Dolphins have played. Number 26, Chargers. Number 14, Patriots. Number 32, Denver. Number 8, Buffalo. Number 28, Giants. And number 30, Panthers. They've played 3 of the 4 worst defenses in the league and 5 of the worst 7 4 of the worst 7 defenses in the league. They played Buffalo, who played them well in that one game, and they lost. And they played the Patriots, and they should have lost that game. They've beat their 5 wins. The 5 teams they've beaten are combined 5-24. They played 1 team with a winning record and lost that game by 4 touchdowns. Those are just facts. Just facts there on the Dolphins. Then you got the Eagles on the flip side. They come off a game where they had 4 turnovers. Teams that turn the ball over 4 times in a game are 1-29 over the last 3 years. There are 797 games where a team had a 4-0 turnover differential in the database, and the teams with the turnovers won 4.5% of those games out of 797. The Jets scored 11 points off turnovers, and the Eagles lost 81.8% in win probability because of those. It was a bad week for Hurts. He's graded number 11 on the year for a quarterback grade. It was a huge game for A.J. Brown, 7 catches on 9 targets, 131 yards, 4th straight game over 125 yards, which is the longest streak in franchise history. But he only had 3 targets and 2 catches in the second half. They struggled to run the ball. Only 80 yards rushing on 22 carries. A lot of that was from Hurts, 47 yards on 8 carries. It just felt like one of those weeks for the Eagles where everything goes wrong. Turnovers, they couldn't run. Key injury to Lane Johnson, and then they couldn't move the ball after that. They had a couple bad drops. Hurts was off on passes. They missed a 37-yard field goal. They had 3 penalties that were automatic first downs for the Jets. But the defense played fine. 244 yards allowed, 4.1 yards per play allowed. They finished the game with only one member of the starting secondary left, though, Eric, and you were pointing that out heading into the game that they were pretty banged up and they were sitting a lot of guys.
Yeah, I mean, they treated the game like it didn't care and they would beat them anyway, and it blew them up. I mean, Slay could have played, didn't play. Carter could have played, didn't play. And the Jets made him play. The Jets made him play for those decisions. Jets look good, and Eagles just didn't make the plays. Devontae Smith is a little bit banged up.
And what did you think about late in the game with what they decided to do? So late in the game, they're up by 2. They turn the ball over. The Jets get the ball with a chance to take the lead with either a field goal or a touchdown. So the Eagles have 2 timeouts left. If they call their 2 timeouts, the Jets kick a field goal, and there's 55 seconds left in the game, about like 50-ish seconds, no timeouts, but you only need a field goal. Would you rather have that or what the Eagles did? They let the Jets score, but then you've got to go score a touchdown. Even though you've got your 2 timeouts, you got a little more time. They had 1 minute and 55 seconds versus 50 seconds, but you need a full touchdown to win the game instead of only needing the field goal. Do you have a strong stance one way or the other?
I mean, with how the game was going, I would have done the field goal.
Me too.
The thing is with the there's 2 teams that are like really heavy analytically driven in the NFL. Actually, 3 teams, excuse me. I forgot about one. Ravens, Chiefs, and Eagles. And there had to have been some sort of analytical thing that
why they did that, yeah.
I look at this game like this. Armstead still banged up. I don't know if he's going to go. This is going to be, we saw when the Dolphins played the Bills and their defensive line, how it was going to get home. Tua struggles so much in pressure. I think this front 4 of the Eagles is going to get home. I think Bradbury, Slay, and crew are going to be able to kind of limit what you have going on with Waddle, Hill, and company. Aitchen's not there. Mozart is a walking injury waiting to happen. We really don't know what's going on with Jeff Wilson. The rookie Brooks from BYU got banged up. Now you're dealing with Ahmed. It's just, they're just a little bit more banged up, the Dolphins are, than people realize. And the Eagles treated that game like a bye. Like, you got to call a spade a spade. They treated it like a bye.
And it caught them. And now they're, and they treated it like a flat spot, and they got sniped. And now I don't think they're going to do that again, because they have a really tough schedule coming up. They play Miami, at Washington, and then Dallas before a bye. After the bye, at Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, right in a row. They play the Chiefs, the Bills, and the 49ers, and then they go at Dallas, at Seattle. I think they're going to take this game really seriously. I like them. I locked them in at 2. The Eagles at -2.
I got them at 1.5.
Nice. Yeah. So I think I'm fine at anything 3 and under with the Eagles as well. I just think they're a lot more well-rounded of a team than Miami, who's really good offensively, but not. And the Eagles should be able to really run the ball, slow this game down, take the possessions away. I like the Eagles a lot in this spot here. And Erik already locked that one in. He got a little better number than I did. Final game, Monday Night Football. We go to the Vikings hosting the San Francisco 49ers.
So before you jump into everything, I'm going to say this. No one has been as critical and Brock Purdy as I have been. With Debo, CMC, Trent Williams hurt, the most impressive thing for me over the weekend was with those guys hurt, he did his job and he drove them down the field against the
and they missed the field goal
defense, which is, in my eyes, one of the best defenses in the league. So we can say everything we want about Purdy, but in that situation, he did his job. He put his team in a position to win.
I didn't like Shanahan there not getting a few extra yards, especially with the rookie kicker. Final drive, rookie kicker. They spike the ball. Instead of going for a few extra yards, they end up missing a potential game-winning field goal from 41 yards. Second missed field goal of the day. And, yeah, I mean, that was – you're worried long-term for San Francisco if they're missing their guys, right? If they're missing some of these key pieces. Like, otherwise, if that was a game where they got – and I'm not patting us on the back because I'm not acting like there's plenty of things that we get wrong every week. But we literally were calling the fact that they were using McCaffrey too much in the morning, right before that game. that we were saying they had not had any injury luck at all, and it's bound to happen. And then boom, it was like Williams, Debo, McCaffrey all in a row.
And I'm going to say that the best matchup, because I take little notes, who has the best matchup. The best matchup in my eyes this weekend, wide receiver against DB, is Brandon Ayuk. Like, in my eyes, this is an absolute huge number to be laying with a team whose best offensive lineman, best wide receiver, best running back are banged up. But then you got Brandon Ayuk, who's going to have a great matchup. To my eyes, it just screams Brandon Ayuk props. Minnesota, I was hypocritical about their offensive line. I do my offensive line grades. I have them right now as a top 5 unit. I think they're doing a great job, especially in the red blocking game. Obviously, the touchdowns have not been there. That's going to get back to the norm. San Francisco, I feel you can run on them. The issue is they just get up so much. Opposing teams don't have
do it, dude. They're 4th in defensive DVOA. They rank number 2 against the pass. The 49ers, they're 22nd against the run. Of the top 10 defensive teams, only one other team is less than number 14 on either side of the ball, and that's the Chiefs, who struggle defending the run. Kansas City, 21st against the run. So for a really good defense, they have a glaring weakness, but you said it. It's like, it's not surprising that some of the teams that struggle, or some of the teams that are bad against the run, you just can't really run against them, right? Because you're down a lot, and it's really hard to stay consistent to that. But that was a great point, because a lot of people sort of think that this team is just really, really dominant defensively, and they're not quite. They're not quite there. And last week was a game where they had their worst success rate on offense since 2017, 35%. It was the first time in 9 games they haven't scored 30 points. It was Purdy's first loss as a starter in the regular season. They had 15 games in a row where they had won in the regular season. 49ers quarterback saw constant pressure, struggled to get rhythm, just 12 of 27, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He was graded quarterback 26 on the week. Only guys better than him, or only guys he was better than, were Minshew, Mac Jones, Ritter, and PJ. He's graded quarterback 19 on the year. He does have an intangible there, though, that Erik was kind of talking about. There's something like moxie in there with him. The injuries just obviously hurt them in the game, right? They had only 23 yards rushing in the second half. But we got to remember, they were playing against a team that was playing without their starting quarterback and their starting running back, and they were playing with a third-string quarterback. So, they're not going to get any sympathy from the Browns there. And you want to keep an eye on Williams, because he came back into the game, but he allowed 3 pressures on the final drive, and he was reportedly in a walking boot on the trip home. They got hosed on some penalties late in the game, sure, but it was an awful game for the officials overall. They had 12 penalties, the 49ers, 105 yards. The Browns had 13 for 119 yards. So we can't just say that was the only reason why. This 49ers team gave up 160 yards rushing, first time since week 6 of last year. Some of their counting stats are good, but as you pointed out, like the Eagles and the Lions, there's a couple other teams that are like up in games, so you can't run the ball against them a whole lot. 23rd in rushing EPA allowed, 25th in rushing success rate allowed. Before getting hurt, McCaffrey scored a touchdown, 15th straight game with a scrimmage touchdown, tied for the longest streak in NFL history with John Riggins. I mean, it feels like it's a good spot for the Vikings here, right, Erik? I just don't know exactly.
Yeah, I'm play the Ayuk stuff. For me, this is just a pass.
Because as we finish up here, the Vikings, all 6 of their games have been decided by 1 possession, and they're 2-4. Remember last year they were 11-0. You just sort of knew it was going to even out at some point. In ESPN's luck metric, they are 32, dead last this year in luck so far. They just haven't looked great on offense without Jefferson. But this was at 7.5 a little earlier. I'm staying away on one spot or the other. So it looks like Erik and I like the Chargers. We like the Eagles. We like the Patriots. We like the Broncos and the one more. Give me one more game that you like quite a bit this week. Anything else?
New Orleans.
Yeah, absolutely. Saints. There we go. So those will be our 5 for this week. Erik, buddy, thanks so much. We're going to follow you on social media at etoft21 sports all over the place, etoft21 on Twitter. Have a great one, brother. We'll see you on Friday for the winning ticket. We'll be following your podcast, and then Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time.
See you later, my friend.
Thanks so much, folks. If you're listening on the pod, still a lot more to come. If you're watching on video, make sure to subscribe to the podcast.